high pressure builds in, and that high pressure is likely to dominate through Sunday into Monday, bringing largely dry but chilly weather for many. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK.
Here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Oh, whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Good evening. The big New Year's speech came today from Sir Keir Starmer. He talked about change. He talked about hope. But is he really going to be the agent for change? We'll bring you an exclusive story about a new migrant hotel that's going to happen in Hampshire. Well, I say hotel. Actually, they're brand new, beautiful, purpose-built apartments. The local residents are not happy. And after that epic darts final last night, watched by almost 5 million people. The referee, the voice of darts, Russ Bray. That's the last final that he is going to referee. He joins me live in the studio. We ask, is darts about to take off as a game? But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, our top story from the GB Newsroom tonight is that the Prime Minister has indeed confirmed he's working towards a general election in the second half of this year. Both Labour and the Liberal Democrats were pushing for a spring election, but the Prime Minister declined to rule that out, saying instead he wanted to focus on the economy, cutting taxes and tackling illegal migration. Meanwhile, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said he's ready to go to the polls now and criticised the Prime Minister for delaying the vote. He vowed to stand up for working people and said the character of politics will change if Labour wins power. More bad weather's on the way, with Nottinghamshire County Council today declaring a major incident along the River Trent because of rising flooding and rising river levels. That's as more heavy rain is forecast to hit the UK tonight. There is a yellow alert in regions right across southern England, from Cornwall all the way up east to Norfolk. Train operators are warning services could be cancelled and to check before travelling. Detectives investigating the murder of a teenager stabbed on New Year's Eve are appealing now for the public's help. They've released 2 images of people they want to identify and speak to after they were pictured in North London on Sunday night. 16-year-old Harry Pittman died during what's being described as an altercation as crowds gathered on Primrose Hill to watch New Year's Eve fireworks. Prince Andrew has been reported to the police by the campaign group Republic after more allegations of sexual assault were revealed in unsealed Epstein court documents. Bill Clinton and the late Professor Stephen Hawking are also among 150 other people mentioned in the documents detailing connections to the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Many of those named aren't accused of any wrongdoing, but the unsealed files were part of a civil lawsuit against Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's herself serving a 20-year sentence for recruiting underage girls for sex with Epstein. More documents are expected to be unsealed or unredacted in the coming days as well. Now, Lord David Cameron, the new Foreign Secretary, says attacks by Houthi rebels in the Red Sea must stop immediately. Lord Cameron made the comments during a visit to the NATO peacekeeping mission in Kosovo. Drone attacks by Iran-backed Houthis from Yemen in international shipping lanes have drawn widespread condemnation, with the UK, the US and other countries issuing a joint statement warning of consequences.
It's not just a British interest, this is a global interest. It really matters that ships are able to carry their cargoes without being attacked through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal and elsewhere in the world. That's why we sent ships to help with Prosperity Guardian. That's why we will use those ships to stop missile attacks. But the clear message here, and over 10 countries have signed a statement saying to the Houthis, these attacks are unacceptable, they're illegal, and they've got to stop. And if they don't stop, action will be taken.
That's the news on GB News, on TV, on digital radio and on your smart speaker. This is Britain's News Channel.
Good evening. It's difficult not to think that our politics and our elections are not becoming rather more like America. Why do I say that? Well, because in America, they have incredibly long election campaigns. Well, 2024 is only in its 4th day, and the election campaign has begun. Yes, of course, there's been some speculation that it could be in May. I would have thought that's unlikely. But Keir Starmer today giving his big speech. Let's just get a flavour of the style and the content of his speech.
The thought of millions of people right across our country putting a cross on that ballot paper. It's what we've been waiting for, preparing for, fighting for. A year of choice, a chance to change Britain, a clock that is ticking on this government. The power of the vote, the hope of change and renewal married to the responsibility of service. That's what I believe in. After 14 years with nothing good to show, no practical achievements to point towards, no purpose beyond the fight to save their own skins, this is their only project. They can't change Britain, so they will try to undermine the possibility of change itself.
So there was Keir Starmer, sleeves rolled up. I'm an action man. I'm ready for business. That's very much a style that he's adopted before. And what was the speech all about? Well, he used the word change 22 times. You know, I am the agent for change. He talked about hope. He talked about the importance of democracy. He talked about public service. And yes, of course, he had a dig at the Tories, saying basically they're there for power, for the sake of power. He said that he would clean up British politics. But I wondered at times in that speech who he was talking to. Was he aiming it at Labour Party activists? Was he aiming it at a country more broadly? There was precious little content. But for me, the really big thing about that speech is when I hear him saying he's going to be the agent for change, do I believe it? I say that because in the run-up to the 97 election, when Blair talked about change, I was convinced that he would bring change. I didn't think it was necessarily going to be change that I agreed with or liked, but there was no doubt Blair would change things. But when I look at what precious little we know of his policy goals, they seem remarkably similar to the Conservative Party to me. But you tell me, am I wrong? Is Keir Starmer an agent for change? Give me some of your thoughts, farage@gbnews.com. Well, not to be completely outdone, we saw the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, up in the Midlands today, and this is what he had to say.
My working assumption is we'll have a general election in the second half of this year, and in the meantime I've got lots that I want to get on with. This Saturday we'll be introducing a significant tax cut for millions of people in work, worth on average £450 for an average worker. Because we've halved inflation, we want to keep managing the economy well and cutting people's taxes, and I want to keep tackling illegal migration. And we cut the number of arrivals last year by over a third, but we've got more to do, and we want to get the Rwanda scheme through Parliament and up and running. So look, I've got plenty to get on with, and that's what I'm focused on doing, delivering for the British people.
So there was our PM, dressed very cash, obviously one of the cool kids these days, telling us the election is likely to be in the latter half of the year. I have to say, I do believe that to be true. Also telling us that he's a tax-cutting Prime Minister. We'll discuss that in a moment with Daniel Kaczynski, Conservative Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury and Atcham. But I'll begin with the Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire. Kevin, I made a point a moment ago. I wasn't quite sure. What was that? What was that all about?
I think he's aiming at former Conservative voters or people in Middle England who are a bit uncertain. He wants to take them away from the Tories and get them over to Labour. So he's got to reassure them. And it's kind of, you want to offer radical change and hope, as he puts it, and at the same time you want to reassure people. We haven't seen the full policy area. You know, what will you do? What will you sell? What will you sell on the doorstep? These five missions, as far as they go, are quite good. They're vague, I know. The highest growth in the G7.
Who doesn't want that?
Yeah, well,
and the Conservatives will say the same thing, Kevin.
Yeah, but they've never achieved it. Improving the health service, improving opportunities, cheaper, sustainable energy, and reducing violence against young girls and women. Yeah, they're all good goals. You've got to spell it out. I agree. But if you're doing the mood music at the beginning of January and you're setting yourself out as the future and you'll be more competent, you won't be sleazy, I think he's scored his goal today. Well, you look at Rishi Sunak, and as you say, he's talking about cutting taxes after putting them up to the highest level since the Second World War.
Yeah, I get that.
One could appear credible, Starmer. The other now, I think, has a real credibility problem, and that is Sunak.
I mean, the Tories have been in power for 14 years. Inevitably, after a period in office, you've had scandals and difficulty. I mean, that's happened since the dawn of time. There is a debate, is this worse than before? But that's always happened. But when you talk there about his objectives, they're very similar to Sunak's objectives. He wants growth. He wants sustainable energy. He wants a reduction of violence. Where's the difference?
Yeah,
where's the real difference?
Yeah, but you will see differences on policies. And look, Labour's tax offer at the moment is very limited. There's a couple of increases, VAT on private fees to get 6,500 more teachers, which sounds great, except there's 34,000 schools, so that's one teacher per day per school. Per week. Non-DOMs to put money into the health service, going for electric cars 2030, 2035. I agree.
The Tories have led with the electric cars.
But you will find that a lot of people now will just feel if the Tories haven't fixed a problem after 14 years, as you say, they're not going to fix it. Are they the problem? And Starmer can present himself as competent. He has run a big organisation of the Crown Prosecution Service.
Starmer can present himself as competent. I agree. Starmer can present himself as not being extreme. and to give people, particularly where you're from, up in the northeast, the fears that Jeremy Corbyn gave ex-army families, that kind of thing. I get all of that. But he's selling himself today as an agent for change.
Yeah, what will that change be? No, I agree. He's got to spell that out. You saw he stood on one programme, which was a lot of change. It was a Corbynista programme to win the Labour leadership, and he's ditched almost all of it. For instance, I mean, in some ways, you should be happier about where he is now than me, because I, for instance, would like the UK back in the single market and the customs union. You don't. Well, you win on that, because he's also ditched free movement along the way.
It's not even being talked about. Daniel, he does. I mean, I question whether he's an agent for change. His policies are remarkably similar to yours, aren't they?
Oh, no, not at all. They're very different in the sense that, you have to look at the full longevity of this government. When we came into office in 2010, we were borrowing about 183 billion a year because of the financial crisis. The socialists vilified us every single year when we reduced the annual deficit from 2010 to 2019. We've reduced it every single year. So that
this year.
No.
Not this year. No. It's on course to be 150 billion this year, Daniel. That's appalling.
After the pandemic. I'm talking about the first part of the government. If you go back to the beginning of the government, we reduced the annual deficit every single year.
National debt. Hang on, Daniel. Yeah. National debt. Let's get this clear. When the Conservatives took power, the accumulated national debt was about 750 billion. It is now 2.6 trillion.
Well, Nigel, if you look at the figures...
I just did.
We reduced the deficit, the annual deficit every single year.
But the debt went up every year.
Of course the debt...
Hugely.
Of course the debt goes up. As long as you're running a deficit, the debt continues to go up. Right. I'm talking about the fact that every year from 2010 to 2019, we've reduced the annual deficit every single year, so that in 2019, the year before the pandemic, we were almost, for the first time since Margaret Thatcher, running a balanced budget.
Let me assure you.
The socialists...
Hang on. The first 2 years...
You've had your time.
The first 2 years...
But you're wrong. I didn't interrupt you. Please allow me to speak.
Nonsense.
If you think you're going to keep the red wall by saying, yes, of course, the national debt's exploded in the last 14 years, but it could have been worse under Labour. I don't think that's an election winner.
Well, please, can I finish? Because
what about immigration?
Labour called it austerity. We called it living within your means. And then, if we hadn't taken that measure, can you imagine the difficulties that we would be facing in a post-pandemic world?
I find it
even greater.
I find it very difficult to believe. Very difficult to believe that maybe under Corbyn it would have done, but I find it very difficult to believe we wouldn't be in a very similar mess. What was interesting was Starmer decided not to talk about immigration. We're not going to talk about nasty stuff. But it is this immigration issue that it seems your party is now talking about constantly. And yet your record's been terrible. How do you convince the British public that somehow we're not going to have massive net legal migration?
Well, just to finish off, can I just finish off the debt issue?
No, honestly, our people at home would be very bored with this. No, honestly, you've massively increased the national debt. Yeah. You can go on about the annual deficit. It doesn't work with me. No. What about immigration?
Well, immigration, of course, is a very serious issue, and I'm very pleased that the government have announced changes to the thresholds for accepting legal migration. Clearly, the Prime Minister has been very successful, unlike other countries, in signing deals with Albania and others to try to reduce the flow of illegal migration across the English Channel. But yes, you are right, there is frustration out there in the constituencies that immigration is running this high, and I'm very pleased with the measures that I've heard from the Prime Minister and from the Foreign Secretary that are in place now with Rwanda and other projects to try to break the business case of the criminal gangs operating in the English Channel.
If you get Rwanda through and you start sending large numbers of people to Rwanda, that may turn your chances around on that issue. I can't see it happening. Labour, nothing to say on this at all. Massive issue, in the Red Wall in particular. Yeah, look, and let's not forget, and I'm not actively involved, but let's not forget reform also getting serious votes in those areas.
Nigel, you're right, it is a big issue. The biggest issues are the economy, standard of living, and the NHS. But often third is the question of migration and small boat crossings. And there is no easy answer. And I think Labour began to say that against Rwanda, but Rwanda is a gimmick, it's a pipe dream, it's an expensive waste of money. Where the boat crossings have been reduced is deals. For instance, doing the hard yards in a deal with Albania, which is a member of NATO, to do the returns.
That has helped, but still the numbers are huge.
And the truth is, you cannot stop them entirely. What you have to do is, when people come across, you have to deal with them quickly, efficiently, and fairly. That's what you need. And, of course, the government hasn't. We've seen now, Sunak claimed he'd cleared the backlog.
I know.
I know, and it went wrong. As credible as Daniel's claims on debt and the economy.
I would point out to both of you that Australia did stop the boats. They did literally stop the boats. They put them under tow. They towed them back to Indonesia. Everybody won't crackers, the UN, the EU, the boats can be stopped. A final thought.
Different boats.
But they have international...
Well, they may be different
because they have international water between them and Indonesia. We don't have any international water between us and France.
They towed them back to a 12-mile line. And it worked. Final thought, Daniel, do you actually think the Tories are still in with a chance?
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't vote for Rishi Sunak. I made a mistake. I think he's been very credible as a Prime Minister. He's halved inflation, and as a result of that priority, interest rates are going to come down. And I see the economy turning round very well during the course of this year.
Well,
and of course, let's not forget that the Socialists want to, we take 30% of all taxation from the top 1%. Can you imagine what would happen to our taxes if the top 1% left? Starmer wants to get rid of non-dom status.
You may well
and he wants to increase taxation to the wealth creators that we so desperately need in this country.
On that point, you may very well be right. Kevin, slam dunk for Starmer, in your view?
I think it's just a matter of the size now. I think, look... You know. You just look at it. You've been around. No, look.
No, I think you're right.
Look, it's the case. I think after 14 years, the Tories have destroyed themselves. And of course, you pick inflation has halved. It's true. Although Sunak wouldn't accept any responsibility for it going up, he wants to take the credit for it coming down.
But that's called policy.
But he's missed his other 4 goals.
I know.
He's 1 out of 5.
I have to say, it's certainly Labour's election, unless the Tories can pull a very dramatic cat out of the bag. In a moment, we head to Hampshire, where some really beautiful new build apartments are suddenly not available to the public. No, have a guess, it's going to become home for migrants. The local Conservative Member of Parliament wouldn't even speak to us. Extraordinary.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I asked you, is Keir Starmer the agent for change? A couple of your reactions. David says he's the only bloke to make John Major sound exciting. Another says, my view is vote Labour, get Conservative. There is no difference. And I have to say, apart from a few marginal policies around the edge, I feel that way too. Now, the best stories we ever get for this programme come from you, the viewers and the listeners. We were tipped off that something was going on in Farnborough in the constituency of Aldershot, and we sent Adam Cherry, GB News reporter, this morning down to have a look. Adam, what did you find?
Yeah, so billed as brand new 1-2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartments in the heart of Farnborough. There's a block of 113 of these, just as the website said, a stone's throw from the town centre. They've been withdrawn from the market in recent weeks. Why? Because the Home Office has taken them over, taking the whole property over to house what's expected to be up to 300 asylum seekers. So, as you say, we travelled to Farnborough earlier today to find out what's going on. And the site itself is a multi-million-pound conversion, as you can see, of an old office complex. It's right up next to an existing residential block. And the locals we spoke to say until very, very recently, they were kept in the dark. So take a look at this.
We understand from some time ago there were rumours that it was going to be used for housing asylum seekers, and then the rumour became facts. In fact, my own personal view is that we presented with a fait accompli. We first of all saw single mattresses going in, and which curtains have been going up, and it was possible to see, or still is, some of the internal fittings, tables and chairs and small lounge furniture. We've heard since that the council has put objections in, but they've had no reply from the Home Office.
Now, as Chris says, furniture and bedding already going into those properties as we speak. And other residents that I spoke to say they only found out about the asylum seeker scheme when a family member actually tried to get to rent one of the flats, only to discover they were no longer available. They've been taken off the market. They're gone. Home Office already secured them. So emails we've seen in the last couple of days reveal that the council actually made the decision not to make a public announcement about the plan. Instead, they're considering, quote, a more targeted communication and community meetings for residents in the immediate area. Well, that announcement, whatever that form takes, clearly hasn't been made yet. And in fact, I spoke to one Labour councillor, and he suggested it's because the Home Office have kept Rushmore Borough Council, the local council itself, completely out of the loop. And here's what he said.
Well, let's put it this way. The Home Office are the Home Office. We get the Home Office applying its rights with regard to the accommodation of asylum seekers.
And so when do you expect the first migrants to arrive? Have you been told?
I've no idea. We may be briefed this evening with regard to all those details.
Okay.
It's been the possibility in our diaries for some time.
So as he says, they'll be holding a meeting to discuss that at some point tonight. In the meantime, the Conservative councillors for the ward, I got in contact and they told me, quote, "We realise there is a national issue for housing asylum seekers. However, within our own borough, we have critical housing shortages because of the general circumstances, and for this reason, we firmly believe that the properties in Rushmore should be for the local people at the moment. In other words, local homes for local people." Residents have also written to their constituency MP, which is Conservative Leo Doherty, to express their frustration about this scheme. He told them, and we've seen this via emails to the residents, he told them he had voiced, quote, "strong opposition to the Home Office's plan for the site." He said that to the Home Secretary, to James Cleverly. Now, I tried to get in contact with Leo myself to ask him about this, given that he had voiced his opposition. I thought it'd be relatively easy to talk to him about this. No luck at all. 4 or 5 calls, just could not get in touch with him. Tried emailing his parliamentary office. Ultimately, I thought, well, we're there today, so let's just go to his constituency office. At least they will be able to talk to us and say where he is and what this is all about. So this is what happened.
This is Leo Doherty's constituency office. Let's go say hello. Hello, guys. Can we come in and have a chat with the GB News? You don't want to come and say hello? We've asked 4 or 5 times if we can have a chat. Is there any reason you're not talking to us? We'd like to talk about the Asylum Seeker Centre in Farnborough. We've called several times and I've sent an email to the parliamentary office as well. Well, it doesn't look like they're happy to chat to us. Is there any reason you don't want to talk to us, guys? Well, I've sent several texts and calls, emailed his office, and unfortunately it doesn't look like we're going to make any progress today.
There we go. Now, we did get a statement from the Home Office themselves. They say, "We continue to work across government and with local authorities to identify a range of accommodation options to reduce the unacceptable use of hotels, which cost £8 million a day. The government remains committed to engaging with local authorities and key stakeholders as part of this process."
Adam, well done. Thank you. And yeah, nice flats. Freshly furnished, up to 3 bedrooms, and remember, free medical care, GPs, free dental care. Nice work if you can get it. Daniel, why would a Conservative Member of Parliament refuse to engage with us on this? It's a really bad look.
Well, I'm not going to speak on behalf of Leo Doherty. He is a very hard-working and effective Member of Parliament and a very effective colleague. I'm sorry that Mr. Cherry didn't manage to speak to him. But what I would say is...
No. He didn't manage to speak to Mr. Cherry. It's the other way round. He tried like crazy.
Well, I will let Leo Doherty speak for himself.
Well, he doesn't want to. You've got to speak for him.
Well, I can't possibly speak on his behalf.
I'm teasing you.
What
on
I
that.
can say is, though, that in my constituency, I'm in a battle with the Home Office over the fact that they are using one of our top 5-star hotels in the centre of Shrewsbury to house asylum seekers. Tourism is our #1 income generator in Shrewsbury, and having one of our main hotels being used for asylum seekers has caused a lot of residents concern, who have written to me, and clearly the situation is unsustainable. And that's one of the reasons I'm backing Mr. Sunak over the Rwanda deal. We've got to break the business case of these criminal gangs who are profiting and making fortunes out of illegally trafficking people across the channel.
They certainly are. Well, you managed to reduce the number of hotels in use because you're now booking private apartments. Kevin, this isn't just in Aldershot. This is happening in hundreds of towns all over the country. And you know yourself, this leads to a sense of unfairness, resentment.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons you have to have the community meetings really early on, because asylum seekers, refugees, they're people too. Hopes and dreams and stories to tell, and you need to engage the local community. I think the MP, the Conservative MP in this case, unless he's got a doctor's note, was cowardly. But look, it's the product of a broken system which does create resentment.
Can Labour give me any answers?
Well, they've got to clear the backlog genuinely, not just pretended it's cleared, and you've got to deal with claims promptly. So people who are entitled to stay are allowed to stay, and they can work and pay their way, and then those who aren't qualified to stay, can't stay, then you have to deal with them, which does mean trying to find out where they came from and return it, which is not easy. There's no easy answers.
No, there are no easy answers, but one thing for certain, folks, this issue is not going to go away in a hurry, unless, by some miracle, Rwanda actually happens. In a moment, he was welcomed back for Christmas. He was there at the church at Sandringham. Fergie was back in tow. It would appear from the Epstein files, maybe, just maybe, Prince Andrew is in a bit of trouble again.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
I'm joined by Rafe Hadel-Mancu, royal commentator, expert, GB News regular. I said before the break, there they were, Sandringham, Christmas, Prince Andrew, very much, it would appear, back in the fold. Even Fergie, for the first time in nearly 30 years, was back there. And then we get the Epstein files. And, look, we can believe what we want to believe, we can say it's all made up, but it does suggest that as part of the British Virgin Islands, the accusation is he took place in an underage orgy and was also accused of groping the boobs of an alleged sex slave. We've had years of this already, but what does this do?
Yeah, well, the first thing to say is that none of this is new. These aren't new allegations. So the orgy and so forth. This is Jane Doe 3, who we presume is Giuffre, and so we know about these 3 allegations of sex: one in London, one in the New York mansion of Epstein, and one in the island. And the groping of the breast was alleged by Joanna Soberg, and that was alleged first in 2019. What's important about this release of documents is that we now have the sworn testimony, the deposition depositions and the statements that back up these allegations. That's why there's now added weight, and there's now incentive for investigative journalists to do their own digging. I mean, it's certainly not a happy new year for Prince Andrew, and he has to wonder whether he'll ever be able to escape the clutches of this story. But we're talking about 950 pages of documents. This is just the first tranche. There are thousands of more documents to come, and there are a total of 170 people named here, including, of course, Bill Clinton, who's mentioned 50 times. Prince Andrew's mentioned 67 times, and everybody from Michael Jackson to, indeed, Stephen Hawking is mentioned. But, of course, it must be said, just having your name listed here doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. This is not a little black book of sex offenders. These are people who've had some connection and some capacity with Epstein over the years.
Yeah, that's right. And it might be, you know, that they've met or they've been to his apartment in New York, which many people in business and media did over the years. Andrew, of course, fiercely denying all of this, as he always has. But, Rafe, how does he handle this? What does he do?
Well, of course, it's hard to see what the royal family can do in terms of this, because they've really gone as far as they can go. You know, they've stripped him of his Royal Highness title. He's lost all of his honorary military appointments and titles, all of his patronages. He can't wear uniform. He's basically sequestered at the Royal Lodge, Windsor. You know, the King and Prince William have both been the driving forces, even during the Queen's reign, behind ensuring that he keeps a low profile. Prince Andrew has been sort of manoeuvring behind the scenes to try to slowly inch his way back into public life. I think there needs to be a firm decision now made to tell him there's no chance of that ever happening. Look, he's 63 years of age. He's 2 years away from retirement anyway.
But Rafe,
I think he should just view this. He needs to just retire.
But none of this has been proven.
But well, that's the point I wanted to get onto. Look, he's not guilty of anything. He's denied any wrongdoing, and no court of law finds him guilty. But when you're a prince of the realm, that doesn't really matter. He's been found guilty in the eyes of the public, and public opinion matters here. The support for the monarchy depends upon public support. And, you know, he was willing, as a brave naval soldier, to pay the ultimate sacrifice in the Falklands War. It's now time for him again to pay another sacrifice and go into retirement for the good of king and country. He did it for queen and country, now for king. It may be unfair and unjust, but I think that's the service he needs to do to the crown.
You feel that pretty strongly, don't you?
Well, I think it's just, I think the interest of the monarchy must be supreme, and he's of an age now anywhere where he can retire gracefully. There's every chance for his daughters to take up his torch if they want to, and, but I just think the time has come, essentially, for him to stop becoming a distraction. We've had that already with the Sussexes. The king doesn't need all of this in his first, couple of years as king.
Rafe, you're probably right. But something about it feels...
I understand that.
I still believe that you should be innocent until you are proven guilty.
I agree.
And I also get the court of public opinion stuff. And he's not a friend of mine. I've never met him. But just something here says to me, all these accusations, they may be right, they may be wrong, but I just feel uncomfortable.
But he has a role in the private life of the royal family. We see him at Sandringham, we'll be seeing him at events. It's just a question of not having a formal official role in public as a working royal. And I think that's a happy compromise.
Rafe, thank you. A couple of What the Farage moments. Would you believe that the British Film Institute now want to put a trigger warning on James Bond films? Yes, that's right. And on the Ipcress file and several other Michael Caine films. And we'll be told that material in these films may cause offence. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. We're all to be wrapped in cotton wool and protected from different opinions and the outside world or social norms 50 or 60 years ago. What a waste of time. Now, this is important. We have 3 very senior members of the Foreign Office, and they are Simon MacDonald, Sir Peter Westmacott and Lord Kerr. These are former ambassadors to America, head of the Foreign Office in the UK, and they're saying if Trump wins, we may well face a major security problem. The problem could be massive, and that's because Trump will withdraw all support for Ukraine and might leave NATO, and they're getting ready. Yeah, Lord Kerr says we need to get together discreetly with America's other allies, France and Germany. This is the Remain Foreign Office, who will use any excuse they can to try and get us into a European defence union and de facto back into the EU. Trump, I sat and talked personally with Trump about NATO. America has more than paid its way. It's just that 25 of the 28 members, the European countries, weren't even bothering to pay the 2% membership fee. And what Trump did was to come to Brussels more than once and say, stop being delinquents, we will stand by you, we will stand with you, but you please start playing fair. But that is our Weasley Foreign Office. On a happier note, darts has absolutely dominated the first week of this year in terms of news. The 16-year-old sensation, he may have lost in the final, but nearly 5 million people watched it. And right at the centre of it all was the referee, the voice of darts. He's been that for 28 years. Russ Bray. Last night, that was his last final. Russ joins me in the studio in a couple of minutes. Is darts about to become really, really trendy?
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It was the Battle of the Lukes, yes, it was Littler versus Humphreys. Nearly 5 million people watched it. More people that watched the Ryder Cup, more people that watched the Ashes, the biggest ever Sky Sports audience that wasn't a major football game. And right in the middle of all of it was, of course, the referee, a man that's appeared before on this programme. Gonna be so out there. I feel shy when I'm with him. Russ Bray.
No need to feel shy with me, Nigel.
Russ, what a week.
Fantastic, amazing, absolutely amazing. Well, fantastic, 3 weeks to be fair.
Yeah, but it's really caught on this last.
Once Littler's kicked in.
16-year-old lad. I mean, incredible, unbelievable, fabulous finishes, and you were there. Well, you were closer than any human being to it last night. And there he was 4 sets to 2 up. It's the first to get to 7 wins. And he was within a whisker, wasn't he, of going 5-2 up?
Certainly was. And that, missing the double, I think it was double 2, missing the double 2. that was just the crucial bit. Had it hit that, who knows what would happen? You can't take it away from Luke Humphries. I mean, the kid's world #1 going into that final. And he's sort of been dismissed a little bit, but everything's about...
It was tough for Humphries, wasn't it? Because the whole crowd wanted the youngster to win.
Of course, yeah.
And to get up in front of a crowd that are against you, well, I did it in the European Parliament for years, but it's not easy, but he kept his composure. He himself has been through a few problems. I know he's overcome depression and weight problems and all the rest of it. And he was cool as a cucumber all the way through, which I thought was absolutely amazing. I mean... You've been to 28 of these World Finals. You've officiated in them. How did the atmosphere last night compare to previous ones?
I would, without a doubt, say it was the best atmosphere I've ever called a game of darts in. I've been to Holland where we had 12,000 people in the crowd and it made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. There last night at the Ali Pali was the greatest atmosphere I've ever experienced.
And what is interesting isn't just that this is a 16-year-old phenomenon. And you occasionally see it. Emma Raducanu came from nowhere, age 19, won the US Open tennis as a qualifier, going through. And it can happen. A young prodigy can occur. What was really interesting was looking at the combined ages. So combined... well, it is interesting, because the combined ages of the two of them were 44. If you go back in the years that you've been doing this, you've had combined ages... up in the 80s, almost touching 90. And kind of, you'd have thought, well, maybe darts was one of those games that age wouldn't be a particular barrier to. And yet it does appear that the top darts players are getting younger.
Definitely.
And it also appears, this is hard to say, that these darts players don't even drink.
They don't. No, and that's the truth.
That's a cultural shock.
Exactly. I mean, the PDC have tried to, take the game out of the pub. And to be fair, most of the pubs now are closing down. A lot of them closing down, 400 a week. You hear these days, where you go out for your traditional Sunday afternoon. Have a game of darts, have a couple of pints, go home, have your dinner. That sort of system has gone now. That's way out the window. The PDC, Professional Darts Corporation, have brought in a development tour, a challenge tour, and then the main tour. So you've got that stages coming up. Well, these kids have got no fear. None whatsoever. They get up there, they get their darts, they've got a dartboard at home. You see kids of 4 years of age. Academies coming up.
What interests me about this, Russ, what interests me is this. We all knew the pub as being the place where darts was played.
Yep.
And then if you liked the game, you bought a board, put it up on a wall at home somewhere. Yep. I've got a couple of dart boards. I bet the millions of families they've got, and it's the kind of game. Really annoyed me, some of the commentators this week, talking about it as a minority sport. We've all played darts at some point.
Exactly.
And it's accessible for everyone, isn't it?
It's one of the cheapest sports you can have.
Yeah.
You don't need a team member to kick a ball to or throw a ball to or anything like that. You can do it on your own. You buy a dartboard, you buy a set of darts, and away you go. All you need is 7'9"1/4, a wall, and away you go.
Yeah,
and this is what the kids are doing.
Yeah, and Mum gets upset because you miss when you go.
It's all old. Dad's got to replaster it,
So, and I get all of this, but what has been attracting youngsters to darts? You say young kids, age 4. What's been bringing them into it?
I think the exposure on TV. You've got darts on nearly every week. You've got the Premier League starting in February. That goes on for 17 weeks. So that takes you up to May. So every week, every Thursday night, you've got a darts tournament on TV. People tune in to see it because it is exciting. They're packed audiences in there anyway.
Yeah.
So when you actually go and see all these guys and girls playing their darts, they think, oh, yeah, I can do that. And then, of course, you've got the remuneration side of things, the amount of money that they can win as well. That combined with the exciting value of it,
but you've got to have Sky. But you've got to have Sky Sports.
Oh, it's got to be on TV. Yeah, it must be on TV.
So Dad's got to pay you, or Mum's got to pay you.
Yeah. We do ITV as well. So Everton a little bit on ITV with the World Series. So but it is accessible. But you do need to be able to see it definitely. And we broke records yesterday. Certainly, as you mentioned there, with the viewing figures, it's bigger than the Liverpool-Arsenal football match sort of thing, And when you get that type of thing happening on Sky, which is a paid channel,
I think it's fantastic, and the whole thing's been. I've always loved watching darts, and the whole thing is a a complete sensation. When you came on about a year ago, we did Talking Pints.
We did. That's right.
Well,
That's right.
No pints, because no,
don't do that.
We've all gone sober. But one of the things we touched on when you were here last time was the idea that, like many other sports, academies were beginning to develop around the country. And it's pretty clear that young Littler has been involved
in academies.
So is he a direct product of that system, would you say?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. No two ways about it. I go to a couple of academies when I can. We've got one in Stowmarket, just up the way from me, where I live in Soham, and I drop down to Milton Keynes when I get the chance. That's two that I've been to recently. I want to get to a lot more when I get a little more time now. But when you see the kids there throwing, they're throwing on dartboards in comparison height to them or their age, and then you go round and then you go to the proper main balls where the older ones are in there. On a Saturday morning, when you get in there, it is fantastic. You see these kids, little dots, but also calling. There's a little lad calling, little Noah from Milton Keynes. He's actually calling senior darts, and he is 7. That's how good his maths is. That's how good a call he is. And his 180 is outstanding. It's incredible.
We'll come to
that's
that.
what it's about.
Well, listen, I've said before, Rishi Sunak wants everyone to stay on at school till they're 18 to be good with numbers. Just go and play darts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you get good mental arithmetic.
Yeah.
I think back, sort of Arnold Palmer appears in golf and suddenly kids in America want to play golf. We start to win cycling gold medals because we've had an academy system that, to be fair to him, John Major helped set up, and everyone wants to cycle. Is darts about to explode?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to explode even bigger. It's big. It's big. It really is big. But with Luke Littler being a youngster, he's hit every tabloid, every newspaper, every piece of media you can think of. It's Luke Littler. Of course, the youngsters will relate to that. So youngsters don't say, Dad, Mum, give me a dart
So
ball.
these academies are going to be
filled up.
overflowing,
Yes.
aren't they?
Yeah, they will. They will overflow.
Is there any public funding for them?
No. It's all funded. It's all funded by themselves. The academy is formerly the academy, and they basically fund themselves. They try and get sponsors and things like that. I know the PDC do try and help out a little bit with various ones, but
Well, it's going to happen.
It will do.
It's going to happen.
It's the future.
And your role. You've been a good darts player yourself. You've done many other jobs, as we discussed before, scaffolder and copper and all sorts. But for 28 years, you've been doing this, 14 finals you've done. Last night was your last one. Talk about going out on a high.
I know, fabulous.
But you're now going to become an ambassador for the PDC, an ambassador for the sport. Is that within the UK? Is it a global role?
No, it's going to be. It will basically be everywhere. But I will still do the Asian tour. So I'll be going out to Asia 8, 9, 10 times a year. Your Japans, your Chinas, your Singapores, Philippines, everywhere like that. Where we do have an Asian tour system in, and we're going to find an Asian Luke Littler, I reckon. We will. And if I find one, I will find 5 or 6, because Asia have the nature and the way they are, like they've done with the snooker, like they've done with golf. They find one, the next thing you know, you've got 8 or 9, and they are getting better and better each year.
Russ, I think you're in for a very, very exciting time. I think,
very much so.
I think, as you say, the sport was growing around the globe anyway, in a remarkable way, the academies, etc. It's just going to take off. Well, listen, thanks for coming in. I know you've had a very, very busy few days, but just before we go off air, you've got to give us one of your legendary. What happens if somebody hits the triple 20 3 times? What does Russ Bray say?
Well, Russ Bray will then turn around and go, 180!
Well, there he is, Russ Bray. Thanks ever so much for coming in. And you can see, folks, why he's been known as the voice for all of those years. Well, darts hasn't completely lost the voice, because he'll be taking that voice all around the world. That's it from me. I'm back with you on Monday. Let's hope the weather improves. I'm sure that it won't. In a moment, it'll be Richard Tice. But first, let's have a look at that all-important weather, says he.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, I'm Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. While some of us may see a touch of frost and some fog patches tonight, there is still some heavy rain affecting southeastern parts. An area of low pressure has pushed its way up as we went through today, bringing some pretty heavy rain across southern areas, and that rain is now going to feed a little bit further northeastwards, affecting particularly East Anglia into Lincolnshire through this evening and overnight. Could cause some travel disruption and some further flooding is possible too, but that rain gradually trying to clear away through the early hours. A few showers elsewhere, but also some drier, clearer weather, particularly for inland areas, could allow for a touch of frost and also some patches of fog first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, a bit of a wet start for some eastern parts. A lot of that rain will clear away, but for Orkney, Shetland, some persistent rain continuing into the afternoon, perhaps a little bit of sleet here as well. Otherwise, some showers most likely for parts of Wales, Western England, maybe coastal showers for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but something a little bit drier and sunnier further inland. Temperatures for many staying in single figures. As we look towards Saturday, and it's going to be quite a cloudy story for eastern parts. A few showery outbreaks of rain likely here. Sunnier though further west, with just a few coastal showers possible. Some blustery winds quite likely for Scotland. Elsewhere, lighter winds as high pressure builds in, and that high pressure is likely to dominate through Sunday into Monday, bringing largely dry but chilly weather for many. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Hello, good evening. I'm Richard Tyson. I'm filling in for the splendid Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. This is my last night of the week. He'll be back next week on State of the Nation. Huge show tonight. Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister, absolutely slams the Met Police for investigating Israel over alleged war crimes in Gaza. The Prime Minister and Sir Keir Starmer have started their battle for the ballots, the general election campaign today. We've had them both out. The Prime Minister, he says that his working assumption is the election will be in the second half of 2024. I wonder if we trust him on that. And new data, unbelievable data, reveals that the bosses of the biggest 100 companies, the FTSE 100, they earn more an hour than the average worker earns in a year. Just get that. In an hour, more in an hour than everybody else earns in a year. And the petition to strip the former Home Office boss of her CBE soars after the ITV drama aired. Now, before we go to the news, last night I said that I had an exclusive interview this evening with someone who was